Barakah.
Shalom Uvracha. This evening we studied together Parashat Yithro, and in our weekly Parasha of Yithro we read of the section which is perhaps one of the most famous of all of the chapters of the entire Torah. Even students who are barely familiar with Torah texts have all studied or heard of the Ten Commandments. And in Parashat Yithro, we read of the famous revelation of the Decalogue, the teaching of the Ten Commandments. And in chapter 20, wherein we study of the Aseret HaDevarim, Aseret HaDeverot, the Torah section begins with the following words: Vayidaber Elohim et kol ha'devarim ha'eleh. And Hashem, God, spoke all of these words. Hashem uttered all of these statements. So the rabbis ask, what does it mean, kol? Kol ha'devarim ha'eleh. In the Gemara, at the beginning of Tractate Hagigah, if you're interested, it's on page 3b, the rabbis discuss the usage of the word kol, all. Why the need to say all these statements? The Lord spoke all of the words. If the Torah would just have written, God spoke these words, for instance, if we would have said, Vayidaber Elokim et ha'devarim ha'eleh, would anyone think or argue that it doesn't mean all the words? Of course it means all the words. For instance, in the book of Devarim, in chapter 5 of Deuteronomy, there's a description of there's a recount of the Ten Commandments, and then it says, Et ha'devarim ha'eleh. Excuse me. Et ha'devarim ha'eleh diber Hashem. These words were spoken by God. So you see there, it says Et ha'devarim ha'eleh, without the word kol. Why is it, asked the rabbis, that in our section of Yithro, Vayidaber Elokim et kol ha'devarim ha'eleh, God spoke all of these words. And the Gemara has a very fascinating reading on understanding this teaching. According to one rabbinic tradition, the word kol, that word which means all, is intended to teach us that even opinions within Torah which seem to contradict each other, all of those opinions are all part of the divine word. Kol ha'devarim ha'eleh. In the language of the Talmud, Talmidei Chachamim sheyoshvim asufot v'oskim b'Torah, the Torah sages who analyze and discuss the Torah in different groups, in varying groups, but they don't all come to the same conclusions. Halalu mitamein, v'halalu mitaharin. Some declare the verdict tamei, ritually impure. Others say no, tahar, it's ritually pure. So which is it? What is God intending? What's the answer? Kol ha'devarim ha'eleh. Both are correct. How can they both be correct? Halalu oserin, v'halalu matirin. These rabbis say that the topic at hand is prohibited. These rabbis say the topic at hand is permitted. What is correct? Vayidaber Elokim et kol. Yeah, they're both right. How can they both be right? Halalu poselin, v'halalu mafshirin. Some disqualify and declare certain groups of people as unfit, poselin, while others declare them fit and acceptable. Is it poselim or is it machshirim? Is it pasul or is it kasher? Vayidaber Elokim et kol ha'devarim ha'eleh. Shema yomar adam. Maybe a person will say, how can I study Torah? I want one path. I want the correct path. I want to learn in a straight way. Tell me the word. What is the word? A person will feel confused. How can I possibly study? How can I possibly connect to such a Torah? Talmud Lomar. Therefore, we read in the book of Ecclesiastes at the very end, the 12th chapter, Nitinu, Nitinu Me'ra'ehad. They're all given from the same shepherd. They are all from the same source. All of the opinions stem from one united source. They all emerge from one great shepherd. Kel echad nitanan, parnas echad amaran, mipi adon kol hamasim baruch hu. Dichtiv vayidaber Elokim et kol hadvarim ha'eleh. God spoke all of these words, and Hashem spoke all of these statements. Hashem is the source of all of these teachings. They're all legitimate. Elu ve'elu divrei Elohim hayim. These and those are both correctly the words of the living God. On some level, they're all divine. The word kal is to teach us a certain kind of level of an eclectic view of study. They're all part of the godly Torah. To some of us, it seems divisive. To some of us, it seems, how can it be? Isn't it causing some kind of fragmentary study? These say yes, these say no, these say permitted, these say prohibited. But perhaps we don't really understand the introduction to the Ten Commandments. And maybe if we did, the Ten Commandments representing the entire Torah. Would teach us that they're all true. You know, the Netziv, Rav Naftali Tzvi Yehuda Berlin, I have his book right here on the shelf. He wrote a commentary on the Torah called Ha'amek Davar. And I highly recommend that everyone study his P'ticha, the Sefer Breshit, his introduction to the book of Genesis. I think he has something called the Hakdama, and he has something called the P'ticha. I'm talking about the P'ticha. And he discusses there a certain period in history where the attitude was that if you don't agree with me, if you don't study exactly the way I do, if you don't come to the exact conclusions that I come to, then you're absolutely wrong, you're absolutely to be ostracized. In his language. Al-Kain, he's talking about the certain period during the Second Temple. Al-Kain mipnei sinat chinam. Because they had baseless hatred for each other. Chashidu et misha ra'u shenoheg shelo kedatam b'yirat Hashem. When they saw someone acting a bit differently in their service of God, so they immediately branded him as a Hutzdoki v'epikoros. They must be from a foreign sect. They can't possibly be they can't possibly be correct. Because they didn't understand this concept of Kol HaDvarim Ha'eleh. In his commentary to the prayer book, entitled Olat Re'iyah, that's Rav Kook's writings on the Siddur. Rav Kook addresses this very same issue. Many of us include in our daily prayers the rabbinic teaching found at the end of several of the Talmudic tractates. Talmidei Chachamim Marbim Shalom Ba'olam. The Torah sages increase peace in the world. To which Rabbi Kook seems to address the question that many students ask when they read this. Talmidei Chachamim Marbim Shalom. It's difficult to read a page of Talmud without finding, two people arguing. How many chapters in the entire Talmud can we find? Maybe one where there's no argument. Everybody agrees. Maybe Ezehu Mekoman Shel Zvachim. What do you mean they increase peace in the world? It seems to many students of Talmud that's the opposite of Shalom. And precisely for that reason, maybe they declare at the end of so many of the sections, it's like, no, Talmidei Chachamim Marbim Shalom Ba'olam. To newcomers to Talmudic study, it often seems that the rabbinic positions are the opposite of peace. Varying opinions on the same question? Is that Shalom? Rav Kook writes, Talmidei Chachamim Marbim Shalom Ba'olam. Torah sages increase peace. It means they increase different levels of understanding, and that is the true peace. Peace is not just everybody doing the same thing and saying the same thing. It's the totality of all of the opinions that we get to the true level of shalom. Yesh to'im shechoshavim, says Rav Kook, there are some who err and understand or think shah shalom ha'olami lo yibaneh ki im al yidei tzivyon echad b'deot u'tchunot. Everybody has to agree, and everybody has to say the same thing and think the same way and analyze this. In Cain, kisheroim talmidei chachamim chokrim b'chachma v'dat Torah, and when they see Torah sages analyzing and studying, v'al yidei ha'mechkar mitrabim hatzadadim v'hashitot, and there are many of it. There's a multiplicity of expression. Choshvim shebazeh gormim lemachloket v'hefech hashalom. They don't view that as shalom. They view that as the opposite of shalom. Uve'emet eino kain, but that's not really the truth. Ki hashalom ha'amiti I efshar sheyavol le'olam ki im dafka al yidei ha'erech shel riboy hashalom. Many sides to the shalom. Torah can be compared to a prism. The light is shining in different ways, different sides. V'chol hashidot riboy shel hashalom shitru kol tzaddim kol hashidot v'yitbaru ech kulam yesh lehem makom kol echad lefi erko mekomo v'nyano. That's why it says v'chol banayich. How tikri banayich el bonayich. It's like building, says Rav Kook. The Talmidei Chachamim are building. You don't build a house where the whole house looks exactly the same. You need a corridor to enter the house. You need one type of room for the living room, and a different type of room for the dining room, and a different type of room for the kitchen, and another kind of room for the bedroom. It's not the same. So someone will say that the house is the opposite of peace because there are so many different kinds of rooms. That's the way you build. That's what he says. We must learn to be respectful of the other opinions, of the other customs, of the other positions, of the other synagogues, of the other rebbes, of the other interpretations. For very often, the other interpretation is part of the multiplicity of the true expression of Torah. Before rejecting the opinion at hand, we have to restudy the Ten Commandments together with its introductory statement and conclude otherwise. Ezehu chacham halomed mikol adam. The wise person is able to learn from all people, for he or she understands that kol adam, all people, may reflect the supernal light of kol hadvarim, of Vayidaber Elokim et kol hadvarim ha'ele. Thank you so much for listening. May we study together kol hadvarim. Mishavir Achav Avram Yitzchak Yaakov Moshe Aaron David Shlomo Yivarech V'Yirapeh V'Ychazek V'Yitzor V'Yishmar Es Priva Es Yirmiyahu Ben Priva Nechama V'Tzara Shirel Bat Lorraine Yachad Im Kol Cholei Yisrael.
Amen.
What's your uncle's name?
Chaim Zelig Meir.
Again.
Chaim Zelig Meir.
Chaim Zelig Meir Ben
Sarah Malka.
Sarah Malka. הקדוש ברוך הוא ימלא רחמים עליהם, להחלימם ולרפאותם, להחזיקם, להחיותם, וישלח להם מהרה רפואה שלמה מן השמיים, לכל עבריהם וגידיהם, בתוך שאר חולי ישראל, רפואת הנפש, רפואת הגוף, השתה בהגלה בזמן קריב, ונאמר אמן.
Amen.
Okay, so we're going to pray Ma'ariv, and then we have some food for it. Ma'ariv, אתם יכולים להישאר למניין? כן, לא?
אני אשלים.
לא אשלים? טוב, בסדר. ערבית, ערבית.
Thank you.
We have Sidurin. We have some Sidurin. Everyone leave?
I don't.
Urachom Here's some Sidurim anybody needs.
You have Nusach Sfard there?
Yes. He davened already. We haven't been yet? Yes. Yes.